Okie dokie. I have to start with this song.
It's all good. It's all good.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. I'll let Whitney sing it. Give them a sense of pride. Make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. All right. So, hey guys, it's Therapy Thursday. And tonight I'm discussing our children. So if you follow me on Facebook and on Instagram, you may have seen a video that I posted in a blue robe, eating ice cream and talking about children and teenagers and how they suffer from depression and anxiety and how sometimes that can ultimately lead to suicidal thinking. And I've been receiving messages from some parents, also from some teachers. Things have been very stressful. Things have been very unsettling because of COVID-19. Students are missing things like prom and graduations, and things are just out of sorts. So I wanted to bring on someone who's an expert in what he does, working with and dealing with specifically with our children. I have none other than he belongs to a few people. He helps out in the community with mental wellness, but we're glad to have him with us too. Part-time at DRT Behavioral Services, Brain Love. I have Coach Phillip Wells. Yay!
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Coach, thank you so much for joining me tonight. When I thought about what I could do for the kids and for teenagers and for mental health and to have a dialogue or a conversation, I thought about you because this is what you do all day long, every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a passion of mine. And I always tell people it's my way of paying it forward to people that have brought me along. So this is truly something I enjoy doing. You know, I can't see myself doing anything else, honestly.
Awesome. Yeah, you're very natural and genuine in what you do. For folks who don't know you, allow me to tell you guys, he is not a native of Miami. He's actually from Columbia, South Carolina, which I told you before, I have a cousin up there in Columbia. Mm-hmm. And you moved here to South Florida recently, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm going to give you a chance to shout out your alma mater, your undergraduate school. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I graduated with my master's degree from Clemson University, one of the top schools, honestly, in the country, but definitely in the state of South Carolina. So shout outs to the Tigers, go Tigers. You know, that's a true love of mine right there.
Awesome. And so, Coach, your master's, what is your master's in?
So I have my master's in counselor education. So I started off by wanting to go into the school specifically to be a school counselor. But, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit later, but I felt like I was doing too much referring and not doing the counseling that I know that I can provide students, but also that I know the students need. So I decided to kind of take it up a level and go back to school very briefly to FAU and just took a couple classes to start working on my license.
Okay, I gotta pause right there and put a period because wow, I want to put some emphasis on what you just said. Mm-hmm. So you got a master's in counseling for schools, for the school system. And exactly. You said you realized you were referring your students to other specialists when you realized, hey, this is something I can do myself.
Yeah. It's a lot of, some of it is just me, just naturally who I am, someone that's very helping, someone that wants to, just help people to find a better, path in their lives. And the students that will come to my office, we will have these great conversations. And, I find myself being very relatable to the students. And then, the way it works at, the schools, if it's too deep or if it takes longer than what they say, 6 sessions, then you have to refer out. But I feel like I was doing too much of the referring and not enough of the counseling. And honestly, that's what I went to school for. I wanted to actually do the work, not referring people else to do the work. So yeah, that's something that, and that's a little gripe that I have with like the education system and school counselors. And that's why we call ourselves school counselors versus guidance counselors. Like, we want to actually be in there doing the work, actually doing the counseling. So, yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about that. So there's guidance counselor and there's school counselor.
Yeah. So it's just guidance counselor is a dated term that we're trying to eradicate, because when you think of guidance counselor, you think of just the person that signs you up for your classes for next year, or may say, hey, Johnny, I need you to start coming to school, so on and so forth. But now we're starting to tap into that social emotional stuff, especially with what happened up in Stoneman Douglas. But even before that, we were already trying to change the wave and be more focused on that social emotional piece, even to the point where it's now mandatory that students are taught at least, I think, 12 hours of social emotional learning throughout the school years now. So it's just a dated term that we're now starting to get away from.
Okay, awesome. So, you said it's dated. When I was in school in the 80s and the 90s, that's exactly what we called someone like yourself. We called you a guidance counselor. And they helped us select our classes, apply for scholarships once we were in high school. And so, school counselor, that includes you all providing specific type interventions and mental health services to students, not just guiding them and what they're doing with their education.
Exactly. Correct. So a little bit more of a holistic view. We don't just see them as students, but also as people too.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, of course, you finished the mental health counseling program, and currently you're doing all of your hours and things like that, so you can take the exam and become licensed.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. And you're doing some good work. And so for folks who are watching, Coach Phillip Wells, we call him Coach. So I love what you use as your branding with regard to sports and just being motivated and having self-esteem to allow yourself to push forward and level up to really go to the next level. So guys watching, or when you do watch, you can go to Brain Love Help. That's HELP, Brain Love Help, HELP.com, and go to About Us or Our Staff. And you can scroll down and you'll see the bio for Coach Phillip Wells, counselor, therapist Wells. And so, and here you really describe, you opened yourself up and just, you told people about what you believed in and what you were working on and how you want to share the skills and the skill set that you created to change your career and to pursue your dreams. You share that with your patients.
Yes. At the end of the day, I had to look deep within myself and ask myself, what is it that I truly want? And not ask for permission to go and grab those things. I think a lot of times we place these imaginary limits on ourselves. And sometimes it does take being exposed to certain things. And, with you, I actually, thank you a lot for exposing me to a few things, especially that one gala we went to. That was mind boggling, but it's all about the exposure to, kind of see past those limits. And honestly, I feel like this is what I should be doing. I feel like I'm one of the best, therapists like in South Florida. And, I tell my clients that
go! Say that again. You said you believe you are, you are. Say it again.
That I'm one of the best therapists in South Florida. And to kind of tie that back into my brand, the players coach and how I use sports, there's this guy named Deion Sanders, one of the best cornerbacks of all time. And he says, if you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you play good. So it all starts with the mental. And I try to get people to tap into that, because there was a time where I didn't think that, but I still said it anyway. And you got to keep saying that as a way to kind of rewrite the neurons in your brain until you actually believe it. It's like creating a new language for yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So, well, I'm glad you said it, because I think that every day, all day long, like, shoot, I'm unstoppable. I'm out here getting it. I'm going to get it. It's important. What we say and what we think, what we speak, it is important in how you execute tasks and how you see yourself and how you view yourself in accomplishing your goals. So it is definitely essential. And so you mentioned the gala that we went to, how that exposure is great. I would like to quote John Hope Bryant. I hope I didn't mess up the name. John Hope Bryant. he was on a town hall with me and Dr. Steve Perry, and we were talking about financial, educational, mental, and spiritual well-being. And John said, if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th broke person. So you do have to expose yourself to other things, especially if you're seeking change and you're seeking something different. So that's what's up. Let's dive into this conversation. So a friend contacted me and said that a young lady, a 17-year-old, I believe was her age, in California, committed suicide. And she left a note. In the note, she stated how she was not dealing well with the social isolation, is what she called it, really a social distancing. And of course, you and I and other mental health professionals have been trying to get folks to understand that this is not socially isolating, that we can all still be involved with one another emotionally, check up on each other with the FaceTimes, the Zooms, and things like that, the WhatsApps, that it's social distancing. And so, I mentioned to my friend that more than likely she had other underlying mental health problems. And so, I don't know what type of treatment she was seeking, but her age, in high school, this is a girl, I believe she was in her senior year. And it was very upsetting to her and unsettling that she was not going to be able to walk the stage to graduate, not going to prom, those sorts of things. So the first question I have for you is this. Of course, school is still in session. Students are at home. They're doing their homeschooling. Their parents have become their pseudo educators, teachers, and what have you. Some of the parents are saying that the teachers really aren't teaching. That the teachers get on, they give out the assignment, and then that's it. The parents are left to teach the students. So here is the question. Well, let me try to break this down for you so that way it's not too many questions at one time. Okay. As a school counselor, have you been contacted? Question number one, have you been contacted by parents or by students who have noticed that the student is struggling, that they're not doing well, and that they need help?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had this, I think 2 days ago, I had a parent call me and say, their student isn't doing too well, to the point where, unfortunately, they're speaking to themselves. They're walking past the room and they're hearing things, hearing the kids, say things, and they'll ask like, hey, who are you talking to? And the kid, just gonna deny it, especially being from the culture that he is, that's just something that they don't believe in.
What culture is he from?
I believe Caribbean. I'll just leave it at that. Caribbean.
Gotcha.
And he's not the only one. And what I'm finding to see, or what I'm seeing, is that these students, even though they're 17, like the young lady, or even younger, they still strive for that structure in their lives. And when COVID kicked in, it just totally knocked them off their schedule. So what happens is they're kind of like flailing in the wind, trying to figure out like, what's the next thing? What should I be doing at this point in time? And what I try to do is basically just say, hey, like, let's still attack the day as if it was still a regular school day. Most schools in Broward, we're on a block schedule. So, I tell them, hey, on this day, just focus on, your A-day classes, and then tomorrow focus on your B-day classes. But after you do, like, let's say an hour, 45 minutes of work, like, get up and take a break, just like you would when you transition in between classes, or maybe that's the time where you stop and you talk to your friends, your family, you get on Instagram, whatever it is, to kind of like, break the monotony and then jump back into it. One thing that I've learned with, trying to reach a peak level of performance and being able to hold that level is by making sure that you're managing that stress of work and then implementing that rest. So it's kind of like that back and forth. You got to find that balance. But unfortunately, for a lot of them, that balance isn't there now that school is out.
Right. Yeah, and it makes me think of the guidance that I give to folks who are studying for exams or who are studying in general for classes, that you should not study for 3-hour blocks of times or 4 hours at a time, or even 2 hours. I tell people to study for 45 minutes, 50 minutes, stop, get some water, hydrate the brain, get up, stretch, grab something, a bite or a snack or whatever, or look outside. Or I tell them to try not to check their phones so that way they don't get distracted or, derail from the purpose. But yes, so breaking up those blocks of time so that way they're not getting overwhelmed and sort of losing focus, because you only maintain attention for so many moments at a time anyhow, really, and retain the information. I want to go back to what you said, though, in the beginning. We've been talking about depression and anxiety in teenagers and children. I was on Hot 105 on yesterday discussing that. Tomorrow I'll be on the Rick and Sasha show, which is out of Atlanta, and they're syndicated and people can hear them around the country. And we'll be talking about teens and depression. But what you mentioned, the example you gave is a child who was psychotic, experiencing psychotic symptoms, decreased reality testing because of hearing things that other people couldn't hear, or this misperception of some stimulus that was coming into the brain. And so the child, you said, thought that it could hear conversations and hear people talking to him.
Yeah. And you see that very commonly in high times of stress. We refer to this as just a mental breakdown. But essentially, that's what it was, just a lot of stress. And honestly, because I know the student kind of well, like I believe the stress wasn't from actually the schoolwork, but stress that a pressure that he puts on himself. And I see that a lot with not only students, but especially those high performing students. They put these unrealistic expectations on themselves to where, being fifth in the class isn't good enough. And like they're about to, take their lives because of that, So stress, obviously, substance abuse or being exposed to something very, very traumatic, all these things could definitely bring on those psychotic features.
Yes. And, a few weeks ago, actually in the beginning when COVID started, there was, a video I posted on Instagram about a patient who became psychotic because of the stress of everything. People wearing the mask, the social distancing, the stay-at-home orders. And you're right, stress can definitely bring that on too, not just the depression and the anxiety. And so what service or what resources were you able to offer the mother when she called and explained or described that her child was experiencing this?
Yeah. So, at the school I work with, we already have a preset list of I want to say maybe 50 resources. So if anybody listening, grab a pen, write these down. You have Chrysalis, which is in Miami-Dade and in Broward. Also, you have Henderson, which is in Broward. You also have Banyan, which I believe is in Broward and Miami-Dade. But also, and very, very importantly, if you're someone that doesn't have insurance, right, you can definitely go to Nova and get and go to the Brief Therapy Center. That's what it's called, or the Brief Therapy Institute, where you can go there and get services as cheap as $15. And I believe the same thing is at Berry as well. So those are definitely a lot of good places you can go. But also, if you do have insurance, you can simply call your insurance and ask them, hey, do I have free sessions? Just like you go to the dentist and you may have 2 free dental cleanings. The same thing is probably true, especially if you have Aetna. I believe Aetna is one of those. You can get free therapy services, especially now, especially telehealth. So, those are just a few out there. I think there's a few more, but those are the ones that I normally go straight to. So, Berry, Nova, Chrysalis, Henderson, and Banyan.
So you give them resources in the community that they can use because, of course, I guess through the school system, there's only so much that the school counselors can do. What are you guys allowed to do?
Yeah. So, if depending on what it is and how deep it is, we may set up a few like mini sessions. And unfortunately, as a school counselor, I have so many students I could probably only give a student 15, 20 minutes. So if it's something that needs more than, like I said, maybe 5 or 6 sessions, we refer them to our family counselor. So everyone listening, especially the parents, call your school and ask them, hey, can my student meet with a family counselor at the school? Because ever since, again, it's unfortunate, but what happened in Stoneman Douglas, I know for a fact every school in Broward County has a family counselor on site. But also at the school I work with, we also have a social worker there as well. I don't think he's a clinical social worker, but he is a social worker. So if it is too deep, then we pass them to the family counselor or the social worker. And also this family counselor can also offer family counseling after school. So it's not only just services for the student, but also for the family. So at the school I work at, if that counselor gets too full, then we refer to the Chrysalis, the Henderson, Banyan, so on and so forth, as I mentioned.
Okay. So, wow. So I did see that somewhere that after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, that they created a whole program to address mental illness in the schools. And a part of that, I guess, was they tried to create a ratio of placing mental health professionals at the schools. So if they have so many students, they can have so many social workers or family counselors, that sort of thing. So you just described sort of, I guess, an echelon of specialists there where, so if students are enduring an issue, they would start with the school counselor first, like someone like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we'll kind of do the triage.
Okay.
But also, what's unfortunate is that a lot of students do not know that there's a family counselor that exists. And I think that's probably something that,
yeah, I think many families are, not just the students, but families are probably unaware that a family counselor is available.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's where, I have to continue, pushing into the classrooms and like just talking about mental health, something just very, very simple as simple as, hey, what do you do for coping? What do you do when you encounter stress? And what's funny is that a lot of them do not have healthy coping skills. When I ask that question, they'll say, oh, I just go to sleep, or I'll, go and just eat, or something like that. So I use that as an opportunity to go in and speak about those things. But yeah, they'll come to us first, and then we will refer them, where we see fit.
Okay. So are you, besides the student coming to you directly, does the school allow for you to like do prevention and education? Can you say to like the homeroom teachers, hey, I want to come in on Monday morning and talk for 20 minutes to the students about coping skills or about sleep hygiene? Do you do that too?
Yes. So actually what I did, I took a beach ball and I wrote maybe like, 5 questions on each color of that beach ball. I threw it to different students in the classroom and I had them ask questions or ask the question and then answer that question. So for example, I asked them, hey, what does self-love look like to you? Or what are coping skills? Or how do you build confidence within yourself? And then this kind of got the ball rolling about, what mental health is, but also at the end of the day, trying to just simply normalize it. And then at the end of the day, I gave them not only a list of coping skills, but also a list of those services that I just mentioned. So that is something that, we do, and I strive to do that. Again, the unfortunate part about working, as a school counselor, they want you to, change schedules and all this other stuff. And that's again, that's a little gripe that I had with, being a school counselor, which is why I went the route that I went with pursuing my license as a therapist. But the opportunity is there. You got to have, a principal that is definitely like on board with that. But also me as a school counselor, I have to market the benefits of doing something like that. So yes, that we do have the ability to do that.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is that your workday doesn't necessarily build in the time for you to do walkabouts, for you to walk through the school and try to engage students and talk to them and kind of, if the opportunity presents itself, to teach them and talk to them about certain things. So you still have to do the traditional guidance counselor type function of helping them with selecting classes. Okay.
Yeah. That's the nail on the head. And, I always say there's a beauty in a crisis. And, for me, that was the beauty of it. Me realizing that, hey, I could do so much more than what they're asking me or even allowing me to do.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because I imagine you all functioning like, walking through the schools and just being visible and available so that a student can say to you, hey, oh my God, I'm struggling, help me. As opposed to waiting for them to come to you in the office, but doing what we call in the military, we call those walkabouts, where we go into a fob or a base and we walk around and we let people know who we are, and they have the opportunity to engage us right on the spot. So you're right. I see that as something that is needed. So at times, if your schedule permits, you can go into classrooms and talk to students about coping and sleep hygiene and teach a little brief type of topics to them. You do the one-on-one triage, and then for the most part, you refer them out, which I guess that's what you were saying. This is why you pursued your additional education, so that you could become a licensed mental health counselor. So when someone is in need, they can be referred to you, and you can actually conduct individual psychotherapy sessions with them as you do at the office.
Yeah, exactly. That's correct. And at the end of the day, like, I feel like, there was a guy. Well, actually, there was a guy. I had a guidance counselor who was a Black male in high school, and he was so monumental to my development as a human being, but also just simply instilling that confidence in me to go to college and get a degree and then even to go further. And I think that's where I come into play. I really think that having someone, again, that you can relate to, having that familiar face in the room that can relate. Also, I didn't mention this, but one of the questions that I wrote on the wall was, what celebrities do you know that has gone and seen a therapist? And that's something that I make very, very important to put out there, especially when I have a kid, whether it's an African American, Caribbean, or a person straight from Africa. I try to tell them, like, hey, people like Jay-Z, Michael B. Jordan, right? All these people have gone to therapy. Common, Big Sean,
J. Cole, yeah.
J. Cole. Oh, I didn't even know that. I didn't know J. Cole went to therapy. So it's so important to introduce these names to these kids, because at the end of the day, they're listening to their music and they're wearing their clothes. So why not go to therapy just like them? If they say it's cool and if it's good enough for them, then hey, it should be good enough for me. So I think that, like, being able to introduce that idea alone is important for me to go even deeper into how I help students with being a therapist.
Okay. In the school setting, what are some of the common problems that these teenagers are encountering? What are some of the most common things that you see? What do they come to your office in crisis about? Is it drugs? Is it boyfriends and girlfriends? Is it, situations at home, financial problems? What types of stuff are you hearing?
Gotcha. Well, honestly, all of those really. But one that I see a lot is just their inability to deal with the stress that school puts on them. School or maybe even their parents, may put on them. There's nothing wrong with having high expectations. I'm not saying that, but a student should be able to know, like, hey, if I, get a B in the class, and then, I'm still, an intelligent human being. I'm not defined by the grades that I make. But at the end of the day, I think that's probably the biggest thing, just the stress of dealing with school. And that's where I come in more so as a school counselor and say, hey, okay, let's start, like, putting things in a planner, or let's step back and actually look at your day and see how you're attacking these things. Like, do you have a schedule when you go home? Do you stay on a schedule? And also, I may tap into a little bit of behavior therapy now that I mentioned it. So asking them, like, hey, do you have a reward system put in place when you get an A, or when you do 2 hours of studying that day? If not, then let's put something in to kind of put a carrot on the end of the stick. So I see things like that. Definitely the pressure of fitting in. In high school, it's all about your rep. It's all about, who what clothes you got on, so on and so forth. And I think that's something that, kids struggle with, even to the point where I had some, students in the past that, mentioned, wanting to harm themselves or take their own lives because, they weren't able to afford the clothes and the things that, the other kids had, and to them, that's a type of, affordable status, that says I'm important if I wear these Jordans or whatever the case may be. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of them fall victim to that. So I would definitely say school and definitely just the pressure to fit in. But also, you have things that touch into the family, kind of like the more systemic stuff. And, I know for a fact that a lot of students, they come to us, but also come to their friends because their parents is the last person they feel will be accepting of, whether they're, part of the LGBTQ community or, whatever the case it may be, and that's a whole nother subject right there.
Gotcha. That's a good description, an excellent description that you gave of all of the things that students are struggling with. I was taking notes as you were talking. Of course, peer pressure is something that we've all had to deal with. That's like a rite of passage, I guess, pressure fitting in and wearing certain things. But you said something. You said some students have difficulty with the stress that their parents place on them. And you said maybe they got a B. And so now they're, I guess, upset that their parents will be upset that they got that B. Do you see a lot of that where students are anxious and afraid and get really sad because their parents will be disappointed in them with their grades?
Yeah, I do. And this is where I see it more so in the high performing students. These are probably students whose parents and maybe their grandparents have, gone to college, or, they have really good jobs, and now it's up to the students to, withhold that legacy. Or you may see that, students may be first generation, Americans, right? And, the parents may be putting the pressure on them like, hey, I brought you to this country to make something of yourself, so now, I can't afford you to slack off, or whatever the case may be. So now they have that pressure. Or you may see the pressure of, them having to make it, them having to go to college because they are first generation college students, or they will be. So now they have the pressure of having to support their family with this new career that they will possibly be getting. So it comes from a lot of areas. It can definitely be, cultural. It can be, systemic. It comes from a lot of places at the end of the day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I had a case in the hospital about 2 years ago of a Caribbean young woman, age 17, who she stepped in front of a train to kill herself because she didn't get straight A's on her report card. Wow. So she didn't get straight A's on her report card. So she went to the train track. She was afraid to go home and tell her dad. And so when the train came, she stepped on the tracks and was hit by the train, and she lived. She lost one leg above the knee, and then the other leg was amputated below the knee. So she lost an entire leg and a partial leg, and miraculously, she didn't have any head injury or brain injury. And I remember when I got called to see her in the ICU, that's what she told me, that she didn't get straight A's and she couldn't tell her dad. She got straight A's and 1 B. She got straight A's and 1 B.
I'm telling you. And what's very, very unfortunate. And this is kind of like a message to like all the parents out there. That right there, what you said, is what drives a lot of students into my office, honestly. The fear that they can't tell their parents. They feel like they can't tell them X, Y, and Z. A lot of times when I found that, student is suicidal, it's because their friend came and told me, or the teacher came and told me, and now I have to go and tell, the parent, hey, your student is suicidal. And for them, or for most of them, they would have never guessed, so I guess, I'm not a parent, I don't have kids, maybe you can elaborate, but it's like, when you rule with that iron fist, right, you could potentially crush that kid, and I think maybe that's what's happening.
I like how you said that. One of the things is you have to allow your child to express themselves. Expression is important. And you have to make them feel comfortable coming to talk to you, even for the hard conversations, the conversations about relationships, love, sexuality, drugs. I remember, my son, Tajay, I remember he and I had a conversation about marijuana. We used to have conversations over and over and over about marijuana. And, it made it the country deciding to allow states to have jurisdiction and to legalize. It did not make that an easy dialogue to have with him, because how do you say he had all this research that he had done, telling, describing why it's safe and how it was beneficial and blah, blah, blah. So communication and establishing that relationship, and being able to hear them talk about the hard stuff and not shutting them down. And like you said, not ruling with an iron fist.
Yeah. So the parenting styles, you have authoritative, and then you have the other one is authoritarian, and maybe I think it's authoritative. One of the two. And authoritarian is where you, like I say, you rule with that iron fist. Do what I say and don't ask questions. And even with that builds in some core beliefs that I shouldn't speak unless spoken to.
Right.
Precious, a lot of people's self-esteem, but also their ability to speak up for themselves and make decisions. And we see that in our office when we have clients. That idea may have been true 10 years ago, but now it's harming you, your relationship, the ability to produce at work, so on and so forth. So
I think that's that authoritative. Let's go ahead and see. So we got the authoritative, the authoritarian, the uninvolved, and the permissive.
Yes.
Right. Yes. And so the way it's set up is that you have a demanding style. You have a style where you don't enforce limits, parents. And then there's a style where a combination of you being sensitive and responsive, or stern and punitive. So that's the authoritarian is the stern and the punitive. So you're punishing, you're not being flexible, and you're demanding. So that's the authoritarian, I guess you were describing.
Okay. Yes.
And then when a parent is authoritative, they can be sensitive, they're responsive to things, but they're demanding. And then you have, like I said, the parents who don't enforce limits. So they're permissive when it comes to things, and then the uninvolved parent. So obviously we probably want to try to have, a mix of some of these things, but staying away from being punitive and staying away from being stern, that's not a good way to go, especially if you want to gain your child's trust, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For anyone listening, you can call in 951-MY-BRAIN, 951-MY-BRAIN, and you can ask a question if you'd like to. So I'm on with Coach Phillip Wells. He is a school counselor and also a therapist. You work in a substance abuse facility as well. Do you still do work there too?
Nah, I actually had to choose like my mental health over chasing the money, so that was it on the Saturday.
Okay, well that's a good way of just letting people know we got to have balance. So you're only working at the school, and then you come to DRT Behavioral Services, Brain Love, baby.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what's up. And so for anyone who will watch this and you're listening, Coach Wells does not. Oh, we have a call coming in. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Good evening, Brain Love.
Yes. Hi, how you doing? I was listening to everything, and I actually have a child who she was suffering from seizures, and so we from that side, we've always been in touch with like neurologists, doctors, and just constantly staying on top of her. And thank God for the last 3 years, well, just about like 2 years, going on 3 years, that she hasn't had a seizure. However, with that bit of information given, we had to report it to the school. And from that, they wanted to do an evaluation on her for having mental health issues. And I recently have been going through chemotherapy. So, they wanted to include that with her evaluation to see if that's affecting her as well. I do communicate with her. However, I am here in New York actually receiving chemotherapy, and I have reached out, but, just lately I have another therapy session tomorrow, so which might be my last one. But just from that alone, one thing that me and her mother have been concerned with is will she be labeled? Because these days, especially with African American children, they like to set children in certain categories that, just because they're Black sometimes, it's like there's these undertones that, oh, well, chances are that in that Black home, there's got to be some problems. So my question to you is will she be labeled? Should we be afraid or cautious or concerned in a sense when it comes down to the label?
How old is your daughter, sir?
I'm sorry?
How old is your daughter?
She's 9 years old.
Okay. All right. Coach, did you want to answer first on that?
Yeah, definitely. So if you were to call into me, and I'm a high school counselor, I would say, okay, we're gonna look to getting her what's called a 504 plan. And if you don't know what that is, definitely ask the school counselor, but also maybe even the ESE specialist at that school. Like, hey, can I get my daughter what's called a 504 plan? And basically what it is, it's a plan set in place for students who have medical, issues that may be affecting their ability to do schoolwork at the rate of their peers. So what we would do is we put her in a what's called RTI, response to interventions. And, we'll have, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And if the interventions and the things that we're not doing is not working, then we'll move it to where we'll evaluate her with the RTI team. And basically we'll try to put in place some accommodations. And that's what it's all about with the 504 plan. It's about accommodations to making sure that, she is still able to perform at the same level with her peers and that we're not restricting her. So there's this thing called the least non-restrictive placement. So, we're not going to put her, in a room for 7 hours of the day, isolated with her friends. We're still going to try to make sure that she's going to have a very regular day, so on and so forth. But also what's very important about that 504 plan is that plan will also follow her into college. So if she decides to go to school after her senior year, that 504 plan will be transferred to the universities where she'll still have, if not those same accommodations, something very, very similar. But also this would then also follow her within the workplace as well. And that goes with the Disabilities Act. I forgot the full name of it, but the Disability Act.
Americans with Disabilities Act, you mean? The ADA?
Yeah, that's it. So, but all that being said, I don't think you should be afraid. At the end of the day, this should be something that could help her. And like I said, that's something that's going to help her, throughout her life. And if she needs it, then hey, let's go for it.
Okay, hold on, sir, 1 second. Hi, Brain Love, hold on one moment, okay? Okay, sir, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so what Coach is saying is that you should pursue, I guess, officially advising that she does have this medical problem by completing the 504 plan so that she can get the necessary accommodations. And that's helpful, Coach, that you said that will follow her to college. So, yeah. Sir, it sounds like it's something you should do, and don't be concerned about her, I guess, being treated differently because she's a minority and has a medical plan. Do what you need to so that your daughter is able to succeed in school. And then that way, too, it makes it easier when she transitions to college to have that in place already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, and there's just one more thing I wanted to say in addition to that. I was on the phone with her mother. I so happened to be in the office place, inside of the school's office. And they were like, okay, Mom, we're done with you. And then I was getting ready to pack up and go. And they're like, oh, Dad, we're not done with you yet. And then they were like asking me questions, tons of questions about, how does she feel in the home? Is she, sometimes does she feel a little upset? Or, they were asking me all of these random questions. Is there a certain type of disciplining that's going on in the home? It was almost like they were insinuating that there might have been some form of,
abuse or something.
Yeah, exactly. Which was, to me, completely out of context. And so I told them I don't feel comfortable, with the questions that they were asking me. And then they almost wanted me to sign off on some things. And so I just find that, for me, I find that a little disturbing because for me, I actually work with children as well. I work with at-risk youth within lockdown, sometimes mental facilities. I go in for another purpose, which is through a nonprofit organization. I work as an artist. But, from that standpoint, seeing that this is something they're asking my daughter told her mother, oh, okay, we're done with you. And then it's all of a sudden, now it's questioning for myself. So that also in the background is why I'm asking these questions, because, you know, it's very uncomfortable for our parents, for the parents out there, and being African-American, she goes to a predominantly Spanish white school, you know,
Yeah.
in a private school.
I wouldn't be shy about asking them, you know, what are these questions for? What is this stemming from? Why are you asking these things? And also not signing paperwork right on the spot. You can take it with you and review it, and you know, and then decide if you want to apply a signature or not. But I would ask them, and it doesn't have to be in that same meeting. It could be at another time. You could ask to meet again and say, I was rather uncomfortable with these unrelated questions that you asked me. What's behind that? Are there some concerns that I should be aware of? You know, flip the script on them, make them answer your questions. You deserve an explanation as to why they're asking you those types of things. But so I hope that was helpful. And sir, also the best to you with your chemotherapy. Please let us know if you need any assistance with anything for your daughter or for you.
Absolutely. And I do follow you on Instagram. I'm the one that you responded back to follow up through the website. So I'm going to be doing that shortly, because it's just been a roller coaster ride for me. But that is definitely very helpful as far as the 504 plan, just to make sure I'll follow up with her mother about that. So
yes,
I will reach out to you on other terms, but I really appreciate, you know, all the information. I thank you guys.
Oh, no worries. Please call the office and make an appointment so you can just come in and process. We would love to have you there.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Have a good night.
All right. You too. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, we had another call, but it looks like the caller disconnected. So guys, I gave out a number, 951 my brain. Before we have to wrap it up, Coach, I do have a couple of questions for you. Yeah. We've spoken about a lot in the last 45 minutes. Wow. We went over some of the common problems that you see with the kids in the school. We talked about some of the things that you're doing in the schools as a school counselor. And you also pinpointed some of the challenges that kids have as to what brings them into the school system. And here's the caller, 1 second. Okay. And that's parents placing too much stress. Good evening, Brain Love. How can I help you? I sound like McDonald's. Good evening, Brain Love. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, hello?
Hi, do you have a question for Coach Wells or me, Dr. Dalvina?
Yes, I have a question for Coach Wells. Just curious to know, how does he feel if he feels that there's an additional responsibility with being a Black male therapist when working with a Black male client? If there's an additional responsibility or need to do more to kind of work with them?
All right, that's a good question.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, man, that's a tough question. Because
honestly, Coach.
Yeah, okay. So honestly, I would say yes. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier, just me paying it forward, you know, but also I know that there's not a lot of you know, Black therapists out there, you know, especially Black male therapists. I definitely know a few. There's a great guy that I know, John Carlos Simpson. That's a guy that I really, you know, kind of almost like seek mentorship from to a degree, you know. But when I see a young Black man come in my office, I know that there's a good chance that he hasn't encountered too many Black men, but also maybe too many Black men that are, like I said earlier, therapists. But also I try to not to put that weight on me, you know. So as a matter of fact, Dr. Thomas, we spoke earlier about a client that I had to discharge, right? And he was, you know, a young Black male, but based on like our treatment plan, he wasn't able to follow that treatment plan. And I wouldn't have been able to guarantee my work had he did not, you know, follow through with the treatment plan that I gave him. So unfortunately, I had to, you know, discharge him. But when I did, I gave him resources to, hey, you know, go check out these places. You know, they could probably, you know, better assist. So that one actually did hurt. And I will say that one was tough because I felt like I really could have helped him. But, you know, I have to try to, you know, balance that because, you know, if I try to save every, you know, Black man, Black boy that came in my office, that may end up hurting me because also it's about fit when you talk about being a therapist, you know. So, me, African American male, if let's say a Caribbean came to America and is having a tough time transitioning, right, within this culture, then that's something I can't relate to, unfortunately. I would try, but if I feel like I'm not the best one to, help that Black man, then maybe I will make that referral to another Black therapist, So you got to kind of have to like figure out which client is the best fit for you. And it's a tough decision a lot of times.
Yeah. So the answer to your question, sir, is yes. But of course, it's within reason. So we're just like any other, being minority mental health professionals, we're like, we expect the same things that other mental health professionals expect. And that is that the patient will put in the investment and put in some work and time also, so that way they can be a part of the progress and getting better. But because of what we do, we understand that we suffer a lot in our communities from psychosocial distressors, and we're exposed to more traumas than other populations. And so there definitely cultural sensitivity comes with seeing someone who looks like you, because we understand the struggle. So the answer is yes to your question. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it did. Thank you very much. I think I understand that there's a lot of pressures that we add on ourselves that sometimes we might project on other people. So it's good to hear some feedback from you guys about that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome question. Have a great night and brain love.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. I like that question. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was.
So I was about to segue into the point you made about parents being hard to talk to, not being approachable, ruling with the iron fist. So I think that's a good takeaway for people watching or who will watch this, that you got to develop a relationship with your child from a young age so that they're comfortable talking to you. We're not saying not to draw the line, not to set boundaries, but we're saying that you do have to have the ability to talk to them, to hear them, to listen to them, and to allow them to express themselves, especially as they get older, because our children don't remain children long. They become, they're just little adults when they're children, but at some point they become actual adults. The law says at age 18. So you want to establish a good relationship, and the way you do that is having great effective communication. Now, before we have to get out of here, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Let's see. The first one is, you've already talked about how you help the students to cope, how you talk to them about coping. You said you teach them about organizing their schedule, having a good system so that way they're not wasting their time, just sort of being organized so that they're productive. Do you want to add anything else to how you help them cope? What other things do you teach them or tell them about coping with those stressors that are occurring at home, at school, with the peer pressure and stuff like that?
Yeah. A couple things. Probably one of the most important things is that the students I see that are able to bounce back from tough situations are those that have a lot of buffers in their life. Meaning these are the students that are involved in the different clubs at the school. They also feel very attached to the school. So, even though I'm the school counselor, that kid may feel more connected with their English teacher. And from that English teacher may reach out to me and say, hey, little Johnny's been telling me these things, after class, so on and so forth. So I really think it's very important that they get involved. There's a strong correlation between students that are involved in school, in their communities, and their grades. So when things do happen, they're able to adjust to those stressors. And the students that really can't, it's because they don't have those buffers in their lives. But also you see that come with students that may have what we call adjustment disorder, students that may, have a tough time adjusting to those different stressors. So I definitely say make sure that they're very, very involved. You can reach out to your counselors and ask them for different, clubs and organizations at their school. Another thing is definitely mindfulness. I think that's something that we're going to slowly start, or we need to start, introducing into the schools. And every time I meet with a client, I always tell them about Headspace. Headspace is a free app that gives you 10 free sessions to practice on mindfulness. And I think that's something that's very, very important. So, those things, there's a lot of other things, whether it's imagery, taking time, and that kind of goes with mindfulness. So sitting down and imagining, your dream life, or imagining a perfect time in your life and reflecting on those memories. Imagine yourself at a beach. What does that smell like? What does the sand feel like? Do you feel the breeze on the back of your neck? And you can slowly start to create that image. So imagery, meditation, but the biggest thing I think is those students having those buffers in their lives, positive people outside of their family that they can definitely speak to.
I like how you said being involved in the community at school, because that makes them feel a part of something, that they belong and that they're not ostracized or being isolated. So I like that. I think that's important too. So
definitely.
At a young age, mindfulness is great. It's awesome. All right. The other question I have is, when you tell them, when you said you asked them about self-love, if a student says to you, what is self-love? I don't know. I hate myself. I have a big nose. I'm overweight. I want to be taller. I got all this acne. What do you tell them about self-love? What is self-love for those kids?
Yeah. I swear I'd be having these conversations like every other day. So it's very fresh. I tell some of these students, adults too, self-love can come in the form of a no. So putting yourself first. So someone may say, hey, come smoke this joint with me. Nah, man, I don't want to. That's going to ruin my temple. And I value that, Another thing is, I always, tell them to describe the perfect date. What is that perfect date for you? Where would you go? What time of day would you go? What day would you go? Where would you go to eat? So on and so forth. And once they describe that date to me, I tell them, your homework for this week is to take yourself on that perfect date, because at the end of the day, you deserve that. And when you go, don't just go wearing, your flip-flops or anything. You're going to go dressed up, looking really nice, wearing your Jordans, or whatever it is. And, granted, I know these are, students, but they can definitely go to a movie, take themselves out, and then go to Chili's right after. You don't have to have a group of friends to do that. That's something you and you alone deserve. And if you feel like you need that because you had a tough day at school, hey, by all means, go do that. And then
to teach them how to enjoy themselves by themselves, so they don't always feel like they have to be around a group of people.
Exactly. And then that starts to eliminate that peer pressure. Now you can move as an individual. But also, I tell them, like, let's start getting into these affirmations, and a lot of them, they don't know what an affirmation is. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I was like, I'm one of the best therapists in South Florida. And now that I think that, now I'm looking for every reason to make sure that is true. So what do I mean by that? So I told a client this the other day. I said, hey, if you're always looking for, let's say you just bought a yellow Camaro because you feel like no one has a yellow Camaro, every time you're driving, you're gonna be like, dang, there's a lot of yellow Camaros now. But it's because your mind is starting to notice it. Like you're intentionally looking for it. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm intentionally looking for reasons that say that I'm a great therapist, I'm gonna see it every time. Like even in this podcast, I feel like I'm dropping gems right now, but it's because I'm looking for these reasons versus dang, like I'm not a great therapist. Now I'm looking for every reason to make that true. So now instead of looking for that yellow Camaro, I'm looking for the red Camaro, so you have to start by putting these thoughts in your mind, and then slowly you're going to be looking for every reason to make that idea true. And it starts off with affirmations.
On that note, folks, I think that is a good way to wrap it up. I like that. So affirmations, just claiming what you want and going for it and holding yourself to that standard so that things happen. So Coach, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on with me and talking about our children, because they are the future. That was so corny, huh?
No problem. I enjoyed it. It's great. And, we got to do it again.
Tell people where they can find you on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah. So on Instagram, The Players Coach LLC, that's where you can find me. You can check out my website, www.theplayerscoach.net. If you want to email me, my email is phillipwells@theplayerscoach.net. And hey, that's it.
And your SoundCloud and your podcast.
Oh, yeah. You know, the podcast is called The Podcast, and The is an acronym that stands for Therapy Helps Everyone. And every day I get on that show, I try to make that a fact. I don't care if you're a ball player that's making $1 million every game, or you know, the student in my school. You know, therapy helps everyone. So you know, I'm definitely gonna be putting some more episodes on there, but you can check it out on Spotify. I believe it's on Castbox, but also Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. It's on one of those, so you can definitely check it out.
All right, clap it up. Thank you, Coach Phillip Wells, and I'll see you later.
No problem. You take it easy.
You gotta say brain love, okay?
Oh, go ahead.
3. Brain love. We gotta do it again. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Brain
love.
Okay. Have a good night, Coach.
All right, you too. Thank you.
You're welcome.